let's introduce our panelists. We'll start with Dan Yates, our CEO. Dan is a San Diego native. He's been in banking for over 40 years, having founded and grown multiple financial institutions, including Endeavor Bank. He also serves as the chairman of the Conrad Previs Foundation. Next, we have Steve Sefton, president of Endeavor Bank, a veteran banker with over 40 years in the industry, along with Dan, and has led and expanded multiple community banks. He is also the vice chair of the Salvation Army in San Diego. We have Anna Crow, CEO of PR. Anna has found herself on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies as a leader in marketing and communications, an award-winning business owner, an author and a speaker, and she also serves as the president of the Entrepreneurs Organization here in San Diego. So leading today's discussion, we have first Ron Harrell, CEO on my far right, of My Office and Liberate, a passionate entrepreneur. Ron helps businesses streamline their operations. As a certified EOS implementer, he has guided over 50 companies in achieving their business goals. And last but not least, we have Ray Adler. He is an EOS implementer and business advisor. He's a fourth-generation entrepreneur with over 30 years' experience. Ray has advised over 200 business leaders in leadership, sales, and operations. He's also an EOS implementer, helping companies and their teams thrive. With that, let's get started. I'm going to hand it over to Ron and Ray to start us off. Thank you, everybody.
Great. So today we're doing what we're going to call the fast overview of EOS. EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's based on the book that's on the table called Traction by Gino Wickman. And want to get into the panel conversation about their journey with EOS and let them share some of the stuff that the impact it's had and what they have learned. So this is going to be a really rapid, what the EOS model is all about. We generally take a lot longer to do this, but we're going to have Q&A later and get into those conversations. So the EOS model is about getting strong in 6 parts of the organization. The vision component, where we're going, how we're going to get there. The people component, how do we know if we have the right people, and how do we know if we have them in the right seats? The data component, let's get some great detail information, leading indicator stuff that we can see on a weekly basis, so we know if are we doing the right stuff to get to where we want to go. Real time, create some discipline and accountability built into that system, make good decisions based on great data versus just gut instinct, emotions, and ego.
So something miraculous happens in a company when you strengthen the vision, people, and data components. A company gets very transparent. All the bottlenecks, all the impurities, all the problems are right there in plain sight, which brings us to the issues component. Now, a company is like a family, and I don't know about your family, but my family has issues. Does your family have issues? Yeah, absolutely. So in EOS, we want to create an environment where every employee, regardless of tenure or position, feels absolutely comfortable raising their hand, calling out an issue so that they get onto an issues list and solve through a process we'll talk about just briefly. The 5th component is the process component. So every business has 6 to 10 core processes that make the business run. I don't care what industry you're in or the size of your business, sole proprietor, large corporation, there's 6 to 10 core processes, an HR process, marketing, sales, some operational processes, finance process, and customer service process. So to the extent you can get those documented, simplify, that creates scalability in the business, more profitability and ease of management. That brings us to the last key component, the traction component. And you'll notice on the model that the traction component is at the bottom of the model and the vision component is at the top. And we say in EOS that vision without traction is a hallucination. So that's really about bringing the vision down to the ground and creating very executable steps that teams can take to grow the business. So that's what it looks like. First pass around.
Goal is to get 80% strong in all 6 components of EOS. When we come in and work with companies, that's what we're trying to do. And at that stage, then clients graduate and take it on their own. A lot of companies are operating at 20, 30, 40%, 50% strong in all 6 parts of this. And you can build a great company, make money at it, or build a big company and make money at it. It just might not be a lot of fun, or you might not be able to go at the pace that you could go if you're 80% strong. So the vision component is answering 8 questions. And on your seats, we have what's called the Vision Traction Organizer. And that's the 8 questions you need to answer. And it's really about core values. How do we define the right behavior we need people to show up with? This is all about our team that we're building. It's an internal guide to make sure that we get the right people into the organization. Core focus, what you do and why you do it. So the secret sauce on why we care so much to be great. If we can get our whole team to understand it, it's game changing. And then what do we do so that we don't, it's the Jim Collins hedgehog concept, that when opportunities come at us, we don't take everything that's hitting us, because it's going to take us off our plan and maybe slow us down or cause a lot of distraction. 10-year target, put a flag out in the future, where we're going. The minute we do that, we're communicating to the rest of the team the pace that we're going to go. So it's really important that everybody understands, hey, we're going to be going at a 20% steady growth stage, or we are going to 300% growth stage. It's a very different environment. Marketing strategy, we have limited time, energy, and money to spend on marketing. So who are the best customers? And let's get laser focused on how to attract those companies. Doesn't mean that we're not going to do business with a lot of other people that call us, but who can we go out and hunt, and where we're going to hunt, and what's that message? 3-year picture is a vivid vision. I want people in the company to see it with their mind's eye, we say, so that we get the energy and the focus, everybody, 100% of the team rowing in the same direction at the same pace with the same energy. And that's the vision component. I like to say we've got our team trying to build a 20,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. If you try to do that without the picture on the box, it takes a lot longer to do it. So this is your picture on the box. And then if we want to get there in 3 years to get to that 10-year target, what do we need to get done this year? If everything is important, then nothing is. So what is that 1-year plan? What must we do this year, 2025, to get on the path to get to that 3-year picture? And then what do we need to do in the next 90 days? So we start working in these 90-day cycles. And every 90 days, we're meeting and saying, did we do the right stuff, and what's next? How do we execute on this plan, fix something that's broken, or take advantage of an opportunity that's coming? So getting the entire team focused on that. Eventually, as many people in the company setting rocks as we can. And then the issues list, and I'll let Ray talk about that in a few minutes when we get to the issues component. So that's the vision component, 100% shared by all. So we want everybody in the organization to know what's on that VTO. When you're 80% strong, I could walk into any meeting saying, hey, where are you going, and how are you going to get there? And your team would say, just a moment, let me grab the VTO and I'll show you. That's 80% strong. And then the people component, right people in the right seats. Right people means they fit our core values like a glove. If you show up with these behaviors, you're going to be a great fit. If you don't, we've got to fix that quickly. And the right seats means we have the right structure for the organization. We have an accountability chart, which is an org chart with a few more things on it. So think about your organizational chart with what those roles are and how we're going to measure the results from those seats. So that's the right seats. And then we have to answer a question. Does that person get the job? Do they really understand what has to be done? Do they want the job? It's not a, yeah, they kind of want it. It's a hell yeah, I want it kind of mentality. And do they have the capacity to be great at that job? So do they have the natural ability, skill sets, time, and energy to be great at that position? So when we get that right, a lot of your people problems will go away. And then the data component, having a great leadership team scorecard. We're taking the opportunity to check in on a set of key performance indicators. We call them scorecard items for the leadership team. Ultimately, we'll have a scorecard for every department in the company as well. And then a measurable for each seat. So if I work for you, here's where I sit, here's what I'm accountable for, here's how we're going to measure performance. There's no confusion, and here's the core values that I need to show up with. There's no confusion on how to be great within the organization.
So what we've found at EOS is leadership teams get together to discuss an issue and wind up discussing it ad nauseum over and over again and never really solving it because they've never really got to the root cause of the issue. So by strengthening the issues component, again, as I said, we develop a culture where every employee, regardless of tenure position, feels absolutely comfortable raising their hand, getting an issue onto the issues list, and then solving that issue through a proprietary process called IDS, which stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. So it's a methodology for ensuring that leadership teams really understand that where a problem surfaces in an organization very likely may not be where it actually started. And so that's what it looks like to strengthen the issues component. Next component, again, is the process component. And very simply, we take a very high-level entrepreneurial approach. We focus on 20% of the steps that get us 80% of the way there. So this is about sort of process compliance more so than a regulatory compliance. So it's getting people who touch these 6 to 10 core processes that I mentioned earlier to understand the right way to do them. They've been properly trained. They have an engaged manager who's inspecting what they expect and providing developmental coaching or feedback when employees are not executing on that process at that high level of competence and confidence. So that's what it looks like to be strong in the process component. And last but not least, again, is the traction component. And Ron mentioned the 90-day world. And so what happens in EOS is we take 1-year goals. A year is too long for employees to stay focused. So we break those goals down into 90-day goals called ROCs. So that comes from First Things First, Stephen Covey, the idea that people are really busy, but busy and being productive are very, very different. So you got a lot of people really busy in a company, but not necessarily focusing on the most important things that really drive a department or a company forward, and that's what ROCs do. And then every company running on EOS uses the same agenda. It's called an L10 agenda, and it's designed to elevate the leadership team meeting or departmental meetings from a level 4, 5, 6, 7 up to a level 10, focused, productive, making progress, gaining traction. So that's what it looks like to strengthen the traction component. So that's what it looks like to be 80% strong, and all of you will have on your seats an organizational assessment. So this is something after this presentation we invite you to, on your own, to evaluate your company. And what you'll notice is the statements on this form represent what a 9 or 10 strong looks like in the 6 key components. As you heard Ron say earlier, most companies when we start are operating around 20, 30% strong, succeeding in spite of themselves. So this is a great opportunity for you to evaluate your organization to see how strong you are in the 6 key components. So that's the model.
Great. So want to take it to the panel discussion now and ask a few questions. One thing we didn't talk about is vision, traction, healthy. So vision, where you're going, how you're going to get there. Traction, the traction page of what we need to do now. And then healthy means organizational clarity. So people know where we're going, how they can. What we want to do is get the people that are going to be our next group of leaders to raise their hand and say, I want to do more. So in a healthy environment, they're able to see that. And also great culture within the organization, a lot of fun, high energy. So vision, traction, healthy. So on that note, let's go to Dan and Steve first, and either one of you can answer the question. And then we'll go to Anna. But tell us a little bit about your journey with EOS, where you're at, what's that journey been like? And there's a lot you could talk about. And then, what was it like before? And I'd like to get all of your feedback with that.
Well, you two gave us a list of questions, and the last one was what caused you to decide to implement EOS? And I think I want to start with that one because it answers a lot of that. And it's the Eagles in the song "Life in the Fast Lane," which riding a growing company is life in the fast lane. There's a line, everything all the time. So we started EOS because of him. and
that doesn't sound good.
Well, it's because of what makes you great. He's a visionary. He's a classic visionary, and a visionary needs a system to implement their vision, or it's everything all the time. And so we were talking about it and reminiscing about how we came to EOS, and some of you in the room know Chad Rule. He held up that book, Traction, and Dan read it and went, and you can talk about that. And then later on, I ran into Ron in my travels, and as soon as Ron started telling me about what he just told you, I grabbed him, got him in a meeting with Dan, and I don't know that Dan was terribly impressed, but I said, this is not about you, it's about us trying to implement what you want to accomplish. So why don't you add to that?
Yeah, as Bill mentioned, I've led a few companies, and I figured I've never needed it in the past. Why do I need it now? And I realized that I was driving my exec teams and probably my entire organization nuts because of idea of the week, vision of the week, and always the fear that if we didn't get that to the finish line quick, it wasn't going to happen. So by the time they would be on last week's idea, I'd have a new one right behind it. And what EOS did, it allowed me to understand how to prioritize all these ideas in a way that I could see where they are in the organization. So for example, recently we took on the vision of taking our bank fully into the AI space. And it's a huge endeavor. It's going to take us about a year. But we're breaking it down to bite-sized pieces because it's like boiling the ocean. And so when you put things into the parking lot, which they call long-term issues, I can see it, and I know when that idea will now have a 90-day life cycle, and we can run it week to week to the finish line. So for me, that brings a bit of peace. And if you read the book, Rocket University, I think it's called, right, Ron? Rockefeller University, which I just reviewed the other day, visionaries and integrators, Steve is the integrator, I'm the visionary, usually shows up as a CEO and a COO in a company. And I can do Steve's job, which is probably far more important than mine, because he has to execute. But that's not the best use of my time. And so we've learned through the org chart and the accountability chart how to divide our time so that we are not in the same room at the same time. This is a rare event, Steve. Nice to see you. Usually we are in completely different places doing very different roles. So,
Anna?
Yes, so I found out about EOS when I joined the Entrepreneurs Organizations Accelerator Group, which is a group of business owners designed really to scale the business. And I remember my business was 2 years old at the time, and I read Traction, and my mind was just blown. I was like, wait a second. This will allow me to better communicate with our growing team. We are growing really fast, and similar to what Dan said, I can wake up with 5 ideas and want to get them done that same day. And somehow my team doesn't jump on that all the time, but they used to jump on it and say, okay, we're gonna shift gears, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go there. So I thought it would be a really great way to provide clarity to the organization where we're going. And so within the first 2 years when I learned about it, I did start putting vision on a piece of paper, not just in my mind. Core values, now of course we had maybe 20 when I started because I'm like, everything's a core value. Let's be positive, let's be ROI focused, let's be this. And then over the years we, followed the model with the help of Ron. And and so the idea really was to how do I portray vision? And then I really got stuck about 5 years ago. We reached that ceiling of complexity where the business was scaling fast. We were taking on new clients. We were expanding our service offering. We were hiring around the country. With COVID, we were able to now expand our team nationally, and we really needed to elevate our EOS, and that's where we actually brought in an implementer, Ron, to say, okay, how do we now make this sticky and communicate the same message and share that same vision and make sure things get done? Oh, and by the way, how do we measure data? I'm in public relations, and data may not be the first thing you think of when you think of public relations, but we have to provide data internally and externally to our clients. And so we really leaned into some of those elements 5 years into implementing so that we can get it to that next level.
So Anna said something that I want to key off on, and she talked about complexity. And over 30 years of working with leadership teams, what I found is failure of the leadership team to truly grasp the level of complexity that's grown in their business because they work in the business. And so question for the panel is really, Einstein said, simplicity is genius. So how has EOS simplified your business, and what's been the impact of that, having a more simple business? And either of you want to?
Well, one of the things that jumps to mind is I always assumed that if we were talking about our vision in the executive team and at the board level and laying out a strategic plan, that was understood all the way down to the bottom of the organization. That was a false assumption. What I've learned since implementing EOS, when we get together quarterly to do the VTO and we communicate what is the most important steps we have to do, the rocks as you describe them, in the next 90 days, it resonates down to the newest hire in the bank. And it allows us to then break down their role to accomplish our company milestones, our rocks for that week, that quarter. You're able to communicate and monitor and actually visit through the software to see what everyone's doing. So I have complete eyes on every employee in the bank. They have complete eyes on me, and in a way that I never knew you could actually do without the tools that EOS provides. So it's been transformative for us.
But it still requires repetition, and repetition is built into EOS. And quarterly meetings, Dan just mentioned it. We're getting out to the business and having quarterly meetings with everyone. Sometimes not always quarterly, but almost quarterly with all the team, and going through that VTO. Our VTO is rather extensive. I have a copy of it here, and this document. And we go through all elements of it and repeat it over and over and over. What is our 1-year plan? What is our 3-year plan? We reiterate our 10-year plan. We go through what the rocks are for this quarter. We repeat who our client is, what they're like. So we go through the core of everything we are on a very regular basis with all of the employees. Tribe, we call it. That's one of our values.
Yeah, and for us, it's really about simplifying a lot of the processes. As we grew, right, what worked for 10 people doesn't work for 20. What worked for 20 people doesn't breaks at 25 or 30. But over the years, we get all these different processes. Well, we'll put in Asana, we'll put in Teams, we'll put in this. We've got a process documented here. Well, I haven't looked at a document in years that we created in 2015, 2018, 2020. And so EOS helped us simplify and say, we don't need, what no longer serves us, right? What doesn't work anymore? Let's get rid of that. Let's keep it simple, keep it consistent, repeat the message several times, because we used to think that it took, 7 times for people to hear it for the first time, and now it's 25 to 30. So similar with that, too. Keep the message simple, consistent, keep the processes, and assess every quarter, every year, what no longer serves the agency. What got us here won't get us there. So EOS is so clear and so easy to follow when you get it to that level, that it just keeps us going in the right direction.
So we often say the EOS is a system to help great people do great work and leverage the human capital within the organization for the greater good. The greater good is everything we have on our VTO. So thinking about the people component specifically, in the health of the organization, what impact because really this is all about getting the right team of people. What impact has it had on you and your team? From that standpoint?
I can kick this one off. This is easy. Well, we used to hire really fast and not do a really proper hiring process. And we used to take forever to let someone go, forever to fire them. I mean, Ron knows, painfully forever. And my integrator, and Natalia's in the room here, and we would have just pull out hair moments saying, okay, can we change this person? Why can't we change this person? And we didn't have a lot of clarity of why a person is no longer the right fit for the organization, whether we outgrew them or their lives changed, whatever that is. So the hiring and the firing process has definitely been optimized to the next level ever since we rolled out EOS.
We call it right person, right seat in EOS. And my favorite story is a different one than that, is that we had a person that owned our values. They lived our values. They were top scorer in values. You score values, and then you score whether they get it, want it, or have the capacity for it. This person was in the wrong seat, so they didn't have the get it, want it, capacity for it piece down. But because they had our values down, we wanted to find another seat for them. And of course, that's based on the ability of the company to afford another seat. But we did find another seat for this person. It required no longer a management role, required a change in compensation. That person stuck through it. They're with us today. They're thriving in this new seat. And I would say this person is an extremely valuable person in our organization. And it's a success of the right person, right seat process that's built into EOS.
So we have about 80 plus employees, and every now and then, about once a year, I will interview each one-on-one. Sounds simple, it's exhausting. But as I was doing this last year, I would hear stories about small complaints, little gripes, and I started asking the question, are you using EOS to surface that issue? 99% of the time, the answer was no. You can have a great system, but you have to use it properly. And so I started encouraging them to use the software. If you have an issue, you have a goal, you're on a journey for your career, and you want to voice that and get it up to the exec team, use the software. About 6 months went by, and I went back and started looking at all, we call them D10. So these are the department L10 meetings that we refer to it as. And I'm seeing better rocks, better issues being surfaced. So when I make that tour again, what I expect to find is that as we educate our team how to properly use the tool we've given them, the performance of the organization should reflect that, as well as their job satisfaction. So I know a lot of you in the room use EOS, and occasionally I'll hear somebody say, yeah, we tried it, it just wasn't working the way we needed it to. Usually what happens in our experience is we send Steve to an EOS event once a year, and he comes back excited and say, hey, we can take this to the next level. Now it's EOS 2.0, 3.0. It really is a journey to learn how to use this tool to the highest ability, because if it's not meeting your needs, it's usually user error. And
Yeah,
that's where these guys come in.
And I just want to comment on something Steve said about the GWC, the get it, want it, have the capacity. It's such a great litmus test. You know, we don't understand why this person's not working out. Maybe they're in the wrong seat. Well, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have capacity to do it? Same thing with the core values analyzer, right? If you've got 5 core values and they're missing 3 of them, okay, this should tell us something. So it just really makes it so much more factual and not nebulous, which sometimes as leaders we can, well, but they're trying really hard. Maybe they're just not in the right seat, or maybe they're just not the right fit.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about issue solving and how you guys have gotten more proficient. And as I said earlier, oftentimes where a problem surfaces in an organization is not where it started. So I've had a lot of companies that had the inability to deliver a consistently high level of customer service. And they've spent months and years talking about it, and never really being able to impact that. Well, if you trace that back to what was the root cause, what typically you find is employees that are unclear of the expectations of what excellent customer service looks like. Possibly they haven't been properly trained or empowered with the tools to do so. Number 3, maybe there's not a manager who's actively inspecting what they're expecting and providing developmental feedback. So the problem surfaces over here, but the root cause is over here. So I'd love to hear maybe a couple of examples of maybe some problems that were reoccurring that through getting better at identifying root cause, you were able to solve those issues and make them go away for the greater good of the organization. So,
Well, the recurring issue that doesn't go away for us is the onboarding issue. IDS, identify, discuss, solve. If you do spend a lot of time identifying and spend a lot of time talking through what the real issue is, because usually what surfaces in our meetings, what's first brought up is a symptom. It's not the issue. So we spend a lot of, EOS coaches you to spend a lot of time on really identifying the issue. Then you discuss it, and then you get to a solution. And if you don't have someone that's assigned the solution, you don't really have a solution. So somebody walks out of that meeting with the solution. If it comes back, you didn't solve it. And one of our big issues is what we call onboarding, how we onboard clients. And it's what we've learned is that it's just bigger and broader and more demanding than we ever assumed. And we've created, task force meetings, same page meetings, we call them whiteboard sessions, created a new broad process document. We still haven't nailed it, but I think we're getting very, very close.
I'll use an example. How many of you applied for a PPP loan? Quite a few. I'll never forget that day because it's felt like every business I ever knew, talked to, whatever, needed that loan the same day, the same week, and it was kind of crazy. And that was an issue. And we took the PPP program and we broke it down into smaller parts. We ended up doing more PPP loans per FTE than all but 4 banks in the country. Could not have done that without this tool. It would have been impossible. It was like a war room, and there were so many issues. We had to learn the program. We had to figure out how to fund the loans, how to process the loans, how to do it with limited resources and people. And we put it into an issue format ran through EOS like a factory. And out the other end came, we had to invest in new software, train people, put on seminars for clients, educate the community while the rules were changing, like building a plane in flight. I hope we never have to repeat that. It was not fun, but it was effective. And when people say, how'd you do it? I said, EOS. Like, what is that? And it's hard to explain, but it was how you process an issue. And that is true. Anytime something major happens in our industry, like the failures of the banks in early 2023, that was another issue we had to solve, and on it goes.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind for me is as we're in the client service industry, we were probably 2018, 2019, we found that we have clients in healthcare and tech, we have clients in consumer products, and we noticed that the hours that we're spending, our teams are spending on each client are very different. And in a lot of cases, we were just over-servicing, and we were just kept saying, hey, you're spending too much time on this, you were spending too much time on that, but we didn't really have real data to understand where was the time going. So the issue was people were starting to feel a little burnt out, but what we uncovered is that they were doing stuff that could be done in an hour, and they were spending maybe 7 or 8 hours, and that was around documenting, putting results in different worksheets and spreadsheets, communicating reports to the clients. All this stuff just took up so much time, and we still had to go and find the data manually all the time. So what we uncovered is really our process on the back end, and how we were sharing data, documenting it, took up way more time than the time we had to do it. We wanted to make sure we're creating results for clients and helping the businesses thrive, not documenting. And so the data piece of it, again, came in really handy. We were able to create some scorecards and are able to remove a lot of the manual processes. And then we found that someone who was spending 8 hours on an account now went down to 5, doing much more impactful work, right? And so the impact and the highest, best use of their time really skyrocketed, saving them from a lot of burnout, frustration, and stress.
So a lot of issues, right? And you've heard me say this multiple times. If everything is important, then nothing's important. So how do you know what to focus on first?
Great question.
Putting you on the tip. Putting you on the hot seat.
I'll jump in. It's the process. You execute the strategy, the process of EOS. You have an annual planning session, strategy session. We expanded it to 3 days to include all our middle management, but it includes your executive team for 2 days. You set your 1-year goal and your 3-year goal. 1-year plan, 3-year plan. That should always roll up into your 10-year plan. Now, we're 7 years in, so our 10-year never changes. Every year you refresh your 1- and 3-year plans. So right now, our 3-year plan and our 10-year plan are in sync, and we are executing. Because of EOS, we're going to make our 10-year goal. I'll go out there on a limb and say that. So you do your 2-day annual strategy session. Then every quarter, you do a 1-day session, planning for the quarter. What is that? You're looking at your annual goals and your 3-year goals that are written down and very well thought through, and then you're doing a quarterly bite, as Dan mentioned, of what you can do this quarter to attack those. Now, you go to the parking lot, the long-term issues, the things that got put off in prior quarters, and you look at those and you figure out what's important. The executive team in each department in their own planning sessions determines what's important. And that's what you're focusing on every quarter. Then every week for an hour and a half in the executive meeting, and we are orthodox in how we run this. We are adamant about it running according to Hoyle, exactly according to the EOS plan. So every week, every quarter, every year, you're executing on the strategy that's set out in EOS, in that book, Traction. So that's how we do it.
I want to add something. When Steve said EOS was not for me, it was for my team, this is a perfect example. Everything is always important to me, and I average about 4 hours of sleep, and I'll take every issue and run it to the ground and drive my team insane. So that doesn't work. So when we get to we use a software called 90IO to run EOS on, and we have to look at the issues and rank them. What is the most important? We have a finite amount of time to process it, and it turns out that everything is not always important. So when we focus our weekly meeting on the 4 or 5 key issues, we get more impact and traction from solving those than trying to solve all of them. So in the past, when I've led companies, I wouldn't leave the meeting until every issue was solved. That's insane. It's not an effective way to run a business. So it's really helped discipline me and provide some sanity for my team.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key thing about the team, right? In my head, I can think about what I want a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We do a 5-year and a 3-year. But I always had a hard time communicating it to the team in a way that it's not just my idea, because it's not just my business, it's the company, right? And so with EOS, we were able to get the whole leadership team on the same page, and we're coming to those annual meetings and saying, okay, what do you guys think is really important for this year? And have great debates. And by the way, when we have those debates, that is when the magic happens, because if we didn't have those, every idea I had would be executed and we would not be a business today, because I want to do everything at the same time and run around in circles, right? And so having the leadership team to also in the room and aligned and speaking the same language without stepping on anyone's toes. That was one of the things we had a challenge with, even when our leadership team was formed. Hey, I don't know if that's a great idea, but maybe we'll talk about it another time. This is the time. We're in the room, we're planning for the year, then we're planning for the quarter, and then every week we have our level 10 meetings every Tuesday at 10 a.m., no matter what. Even if some people can't make it, it does not matter, and it never goes above more than 90 minutes, right? And so when we look at the quarter, we say, are we on track? Are we off track? If we're off track, is it an issue that we need to solve today? Or do we need to put it on some sort of a list and come back to it? Whatever that looks like, right? And if we're on track, fantastic. What are the issues that are short term that we have to go through today? And so you really take this big grand plan and you distill it, and then the cool thing is everybody's talking the same language, everybody's on the same page, and we can have those robust conversations.
Just ask a question. Show of hands, how many of you like meetings? That's what I expected. There is one meeting a week, the one you're talking about. If I miss it, it is almost painful. We accomplish so much. It is such a valuable 90 minutes per week that there's nothing in the business world that I look forward to more than being in that room for 90 minutes, because we accomplish so much. Never have I experienced that before using EOS. And when I go on vacation and I miss that meeting, it's an uncomfortable feeling, because you know that in those 90 minutes when you weren't there, a lot was discussed and solved, and I didn't have a voice. And so that's my biggest challenge is Steve, give me the minutes from that meeting. What did you guys do? It's crazy.
That's why I'm laughing. Putting together the minutes for if the rare occasion when he misses is an arduous task, because he wants to know everything that was discussed.
Well, sometimes when I'm on vacation or doing something for EO, my other full-time job, I will go into, and I have to miss the meeting, I'll actually look at our Teams chat, because they're having a meeting and they're chatting about some things on the side, and I'll just read through it and listen to it and sometimes chime in with something. And they'll say, oh, Anna's paying attention, but then I'll go away because I know it's not my meeting, it's a Teams meeting. But to your point, I don't like missing those.
No.
Because a lot gets done. They're very, very productive in a short amount of time.
And let me also ask, a show of hands in the room, how many people have a written strategic plan? Probably half or more than half of the hands will go up. And then the question, how many of you are looking at your strategic plan quarterly? A lot of the hands go down. How many of you are looking at your strategic plan weekly? I don't think there's very many hands that go up. This VTO is a living, breathing strategic plan. We are touching it, discussing it, chewing on it weekly in this meeting. So this strategic plan lives in the organization better than anything I've ever seen.
So I want to ask a question. Anna, you mentioned process, and profit evaporates through process. And the tools that they're talking about, we have a saying, you slow down to speed up. We're all running 200 miles an hour, and these tools force us to slow down and look more deeply into our numbers and the stories that our numbers tell us. The analogy is we've all probably driven a car or motorcycle over 100 miles an hour. And so at that pace, you're very focused on keeping in the lines. But at 50, 60 miles an hour, you can see the Coke can, you can see things. And so really my question has to do with how has the leadership team scorecard and this commitment to process efficiency driven profitability. And I just want to ask a question of the audience. How many of you have clarity to know by client how profitable each client is? How many of you have that level of granularity? I don't see a lot of hands going up. So here's, and
it's a rock this quarter.
Yeah. Well, so what happens then is it doesn't matter, if we've been working with service companies or companies that, time and materials, construction, heavy power, things like that. But what I've seen consistently is anywhere from, on the low end, 20 to 25% to upwards of 33 to 40% of a company's clients are unprofitable, and they don't know it. So the team's working very hard in delivering exceptional customer service, but 25 to 33% are actually hurting the bottom line of the business. And so I'd like to kind of direct the question to you guys is how has, documenting and simplifying your processes and then combining in the scorecard kind of opened your eyes to ways to really hone and drive profitability?
Yeah, I could start. I mean, when we're looking at the 5-year goal, the 3-year goal, and the 1 year, revenue and profit are right there, right? Every single person in the company knows what our revenue and our profit goals are. And when we started the process, we had to sit down with our team and talk about profitability, right? This company exists, every company exists for a profit. What does that mean, and how do you contribute to that? Even just that clarity already sets the tone in the right direction for the company. So then layering in all the time saving and efficiencies by whether it's dashboards, scorecards, meetings, conversations, right? We had teams, managers meeting with their direct reports once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Sometimes if something's not working, you just hop in a meeting, hop on a call. How much time is wasted in that? So even having rhythms of meetings that are laid out, consistency in those, plus the scorecards, plus everything else we talked about, that in itself saves time and helps us be a more profitable company. And then same thing goes on the flip side, even just on the financials and working with our controller, who's also obviously part of the EOS system. It just really has made a huge, huge difference. But I think that it started with that clarity. What does that mean? And now our leaders and our teams are making decisions that are in line with the profit, not just, hey, I want to get a raise, or hey, can I fly here? Can I fly there? So it aligns everybody.
To give you a perspective, there's just over 4,000 banks in the country, and the majority are 50 to 100 years old, sitting at about 100 million in assets. We are a high growth bank where our goal was to hit $1 billion by our 10th year anniversary. That puts a lot of strain and pressure on everything from capital to people. And one of our values is sense of urgency, because when you have that type of a goal, you're always going at Mach 10. So there will be days when we're talking about go faster, but then like Ron said, every now and then we have to slow down. Slow down, look at our processes, figure out how, Steve mentioned onboarding, how do we take care of these issues and get it right so we can go faster. And it is a strange feeling to be going 100 miles an hour and then all of a sudden have to slow down long enough to look at how you're doing what you're doing, using technology, tools, AI, whatever it takes to get it right so you can then step back on the gas pedal. And that's part of what EOS helps you do.
Can I say something about values?
Yeah.
So Dan and we're really bad about putting art on the wall. We don't even have posters on the wall. We have nothing on the wall. It's just, you come in the bank and it's embarrassing, actually, now that I think about it. But one of those things is you go in a lot of businesses and they have all these slogan posters, their values, what they believe in. And what we observed is it's just that, a slogan. It doesn't mean anything. So if something's going on our wall, it means something. Our values are all over our walls now. And we took about a year to come up with those values. We involved the entire organization. We had a contest. We gave out awards for who came up with the values, and we just really spent a lot of time. And Ron has a saying about condition to be on the field. Honesty is not one of our values. It's a condition to be on the field. It's like breathing. Breathing is not a value. Well, you gotta breathe. So our values really drive what all of our people are about. We hire by them, we review by them, and it took a year to get to our values. So it's really the core of this document. It's the core of who we are.
So you guys have both been on the journey for a while. Think about next stage, EOS rollout, challenges, difficulties. What are some of the things that you're hitting? Like we talk about what you're describing, stretch, master, stretch, master, stretch, master. So as you go through that stretch mastery stage, what are some of the things that are surprising you?
I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Ron when we were starting our EOS journey. It took us about a year to master how to run an EOS meeting. And I wanted to roll it out sooner to the rest of the organization. And Ron said, you can do that, but I don't recommend it. We eventually rolled it out, and I just assumed that they figured out how to run their D10 meetings the way we were doing our L10 meetings. A year went by, another year went by, and we brought Ron in last year to do a retreat for our company. For many of our team, it was the first time they were hearing how to use EOS properly. And until you get everyone dialed in the organization, you'll never maximize the utility of EOS. So every time you add a new member to your organization, they don't even know, in many cases, what EOS is, and they have to be acclimated to it, dialed in. And so the journey for me is getting optimal outcome in educating employees how to use EOS for their benefit and for the organization's benefit. And that is a never-ending journey.
Yeah, I'd say that for sure. As you say, you have a hiring spree, you bring on 20 employees. How do you integrate them into EOS, educate them, explain the why, and do that whole thing again? But also with technology, as technology evolves, and our scorecards are optimized every year. Now we're integrating AI into them. Now we're reshaping a lot of the things that we've created. The basics are the same, of course, what information we're looking for, but it's continuously elevated. So just investing in those technologies as well to make sure we're always providing the right information at the right time, using the best tools to be the most efficient and be able to do what we do best.
If you asked me to give a grade of how well we're doing with EOS, I would have given a very different grade 18 months ago than today. It's called hitting the ceiling. We grew about 40% in personnel last year, 30%, 25, 30% in asset growth. It's a lot of growth, and I don't think we appreciated what that did to us in terms of hitting the ceiling, having to rebuild. Anna mentioned something like that a minute ago. In your journey, and Ron and Ray ask about 100% right person, right seat. Well, as soon as you get 100%, you're going to break that as you grow because things change as you move along. So it's a continuum. You never really arrive in a growing company.
Yeah, you just reminded me in our the vision, the organizer, the VTO, right? We have our revenue, our profit. We have our PRS as the goal, the right person, right seat. And let's say we have 80%, and then we hire a bunch of people. I always look at that number and I talk to them like, oh God, don't bring that number down. I want to stay at 80%, right? So what do we need to do? But you're right, it's dynamic. It's not a static thing.
So I want to talk a little bit about leadership and management. And at EOS, there's an acronym called LMA. So it stands for leadership plus management equals accountability. And so that's one of the reasons that companies implement EOS is to drive greater accountability. So I'd love to hear how, through this process, your mid-level managers, how EOS has helped elevate the leadership and management capability of all of your leaders in the organization to drive accountability.
Well, I was going to say, I'm working with one of our departments right now, HR, and they had policies, they had benefits they wanted to look at, and it's simple. You sit down, you develop the rocks. What do we need to accomplish? What are the milestones? The tasks have to be done every week. And so right now we've got RFPs out looking at all types of things to uplift that part of our organization. And I was noticing that the wheels were spinning because they didn't understand what their role was. Sometimes you'll hear an employee complain, we can't get this to the finish line. If you can't get it to the finish line, you haven't set your rocks, your milestones properly. You're not running your D10 meeting effectively, because if you do it correctly, you will get to the finish line. When we look at the end of each quarter and we evaluate what percentage of our quarterly goals that we accomplish, I expect it to be 80, 90%, because on a weekly basis, we're asking the question, are you on or off track? Do you need help? Have you done what you're supposed to do in your role in accomplishing the company rocks? And it is huge accountability down to the person level. If it doesn't work well, you're not running the EOS properly. It's always the case. It's not the person, it's how they're using the tool.
And if you think about it, when we started EOS, we probably had 20, 25 employees. So you have 5 executives with a hired consultant spending intense amount of time learning how to have the cadence and rhythm of an L10 meeting. That's what we call it, that weekly meeting. Then you triple the size of the business. Now you have divisional meetings trying to replicate that. It's a lot more complicated, and it requires a lot more time and effort. And I don't think we appreciated how difficult that is to bring in a new middle manager that's new to the company, that's never heard of EOS, and say, run a good D10 meeting. Well, that's throwing them to the wolves. It's hard. That's why we started the training piece. But I think that's why I said I'd give us a different grade 18 months ago than today. After this growth spurt, we're kind of reeling a little bit. We've hit the ceiling of complication. We're having to rebuild some of our processes to get everybody in line and working on their D10s.
Now, this is one of my favorite ones because, show of hands, how many people believe there are a lot of mid-level managers who know how to lead, how to manage, and to hold someone accountable really, really well? Not that many. It's usually someone's a really great manager, but leadership, meh, or they're an awesome leader, but managing someone, holding them accountable, I don't want to rain on their parade. I'm setting the vision. I'm getting them excited. And I just hope that they're going to do their job really well, right? And so for me, these three words are so impactful. We are able to train people how to lead someone, to inspire them to greatness, to manage them, to make sure that they are feeling seen and heard and are performing their job duties, and hold them accountable to the success metrics that you both agree on, right? If there's that clarity, what does success look like in my job? You are able to now do those three things. But to your point, coming into the organization, when we're hiring managers and leaders, they're not familiar with this. So we do have to, we have something called the Nest University, because companies crow PR, we do a lot of bird puns, super fun, keeps it interesting. And so we have trainings for our mid-level managers on EOS on how to lead, manage, and hold accountable. And also that is not static, that is dynamic too.
How many of you have read the book Good to Great or Built to Last? And how many of you read any of Stephen Covey's books? So when I picked up Traction, I thought, oh, they're stealing the ideas from those great authors. That's why I was unimpressed. I didn't get it. What I didn't understand about EOS is you're taking all these great ideas that we read in various business books and you're creating a system around it. That's what makes it work so effectively. And that was the part that I didn't get. When I thought, I know this stuff, I've read this, right people in the right seats, well, how hard can that be? And when you have a tool that actually allows you to execute on it, and you see how effective it is. Steve mentioned one of our original employees who we moved to a better seat. He's a rock star today, but back before that, we were having some issues. Values are never the problem. It was using the right tool to get that person in the right seat, and now the organization and that individual is better off for it. So it's amazing when you know how to use the things you read about in business books and apply it to a system.
On that note, talk a little bit about the different, using an implementer to help you, because you can self-implement an EOS or hire an implementer like Ray or I. So what's the?
Let me have this one. I have a saying: friends don't let friends self-implement. If you are self-implementing, my heart goes out to you. What is self-implementing? It means you don't hire one of these guys or gals. There's plenty of implementers out there. But you get traction, you read the book, and you're going to do it yourself. I do not recommend that. When we started EOS, we were in our second year. We were not profitable. So we were spending capital, if you think about it, to invest in EOS. But it got us to profitability much faster. It was the best investment I think we've ever made.
I'll just add to that, there were times in our first year trying to implement EOS that I thought this was the wrong tool for us, and we would go to Ron, and he said, well, actually, you're doing better than 80% of the companies that use the tool. And it just takes time to really understand how to use it at a high level. So if you've started on your journey and you're struggling, first thing I would ask, have you self-implemented? Revisit that decision. But keep working on this tool because it is simple in description, complicated in executing at the high level.
Yeah, I made that mistake. I self-implemented for a while because as a visionary, optimist entrepreneur, I'm like, I can do this. I've read the book. Let me bring this to the team. Easy peasy, right? And so we did a lot of it. As I mentioned, we did the vision, we did our values, we got some initial numbers down. So, but then we hit that ceiling, and I couldn't take the team any farther because, oh, by the way, I also have to do all the other jobs, right? And it just needed somebody, a third party, to come in and sit down and align. And I'd say in one of our last meetings, one of our directors it was about 75 days into the quarter, and we were ready for our next quarterly meeting. And I'll never forget we were sitting in the room, and one of our directors goes, "Oh, Ron, thank God you're here," because we were ready to talk about the things and have another person in the room who knows this stuff inside out, and just be provocative. Right? We're not always as provocative, but it's just a great reminder when we have an implementer. So I think you can do it as a start to just for like a day, and then bring in an implementer, because it's a lot more helpful, and you'll save yourself a lot of time.
By the way, I was in Vistage for about 12 years, and I always remember in Vistage, they would have these statistics that members of Vistage were operating at a higher level than their peers. I would say that's true of Vistage. It's also true of EOS companies. I recall not too long ago, I was calling on a business that is in an industry that is notoriously known for failure, low profitability, bankruptcies, and I meet an individual who is running a high-performing business in that industry. We spent the next 2 hours comparing notes on EOS, and that started to open my eyes as to how effective it is. In my last bank, we had a general contractor who, when I last saw them, were on their way to bankruptcy court. Revisit that company years later at Endeavor, and they were one of the top performing general contractors in San Diego, and I said, what changed? EOS. And it really started to make me think about when we're evaluating someone to lend money to, if it's not EOS, if they have any type of a good system and it's working well, it's a good chance I'm going to find behind that system a high-performing company, and that's a lot easier to lend money to. So for me, if you want a loan, get a good system.
Get on EOS.
Great testament. So let's open it up to questions from anybody. There's 4 microphones. Does anybody have any questions that you'd like more information on or detail? And if not, we can
Don't be shy. Oh, I see one.
keep asking you guys questions.
Thank you. Good morning. Brandon Hawkins, CRO of CFO Hub. Question for you. I've got 80 employees across the country, and the 3 of us in the owner's box have a tremendous amount of energy and rah-rah around our business and around EOS specifically as we look to implement. But how do we take that and roll that out all the way across the country to a couple of folks that we only see on Zoom every few days? How do you do that? Have you had any experience with that?
Before the experts answer the question, and I think anybody else can answer it other than me, I'm going to ask, have you hired an implementer? Okay. Good idea.
Well, Duncan, stand up. Duncan, how often do I get to see you? Give him a mic. Not very often. So Duncan runs our Northern Division, Los Angeles, Inland Empire and all that. Joined us about a year ago, and I think it was about August when we had Ron do our employee retreat and really brought Duncan into how to use EOS as a leader. And I get a chance now to go into the software and look at what Duncan's doing, what are the rocks he's setting for the team up there, how are they executing. We also have Salesforce, so I can look at all the chatter and see what everyone's doing every day. So even though he's miles away from me that I don't get to touch him very often, I can tell you he's crushing it in our Northern Division. So is EOS something that you're starting to get the stride on?
Slowly but surely, we're ramping up and starting to utilize it more with our weekly D10. So it's getting much better and much more proficient.
That's my example.
So I'd love to jump in. So we've got San Diego-based leadership teams that have Latin American executives on different time zones. I've got clients in Connecticut where their leadership team is all over the country. COVID has created that environment where people don't necessarily have to be in the office, so we're all pretty accustomed to that. So this gets implemented virtually very, very effectively. The session days are implemented virtually. The tools are implemented virtually, so there's just no issue with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you think about it, we're trying to get everybody on the same page. And we've got to have a communication model, which is your meeting rhythm. And we don't want to have everybody in every meeting. So the ability to have a system, a meeting rhythm, and a common language. The common language is a lot of times not really talked about, but that is a huge component to getting everybody on the same page. When you have a virtual team, they feel like they're on an island, And if you can get this VTO articulated and have regular state of the company meetings every 90 days so everybody knows how you're doing on that, and set up the right communication modeling, it's going to be game changing in the long term, because without it, it's how are we going to get all these people to see, to really, really understand where we're going, what we need to do, and what their role is in it, and how they can be great. That's what we're at.
By the way, we do our weekly L10 meetings 90% of the time on Zoom. So they could be anywhere in the world if they have access to Zoom. We try to do them in person every now and then, but I'm just accustomed to doing it on Zoom. So it works just as well with teams across the country.
Yeah, one of the things we do, we have teams in 14 markets, and so every Monday we have our all hands call, right, on Zoom, and every Tuesday we have our L10. But on that Zoom, we integrate EOS into all different aspects, even on that call. Like, we'll do core value shout outs to start the meeting. So anyone all over the country adds a person to the list that has displayed a core value that week, right? So if one of our values is entrepreneurial spirit, hey, Rebecca really displayed entrepreneurial spirit this week by doing X, Y, Z. So that's in the conversation. And then we'll have other people presenting, usually once a week, on one element of EOS as a reminder. Because again, we forget. Even as leaders, sometimes Ron will ask us, define something. And we'll sit there like, I've been studying this forever, and I just forget, right? So it's just that repetition, but I think the consistent language that Ray spoke to is really, really critical.
Congratulations all for being walking, talking role model examples of this. Mike Richardson with Ref Peer Forums. I got to be in a peer forum with Dan for a little while when I was onboarding as a Vistage chair. And Dan, in a peer forum, you really get to the heart of psychological safety, don't you? And the transparency and to sort of put it out there. Talk a bit more about core values and culture, and how you get to that root of psychological safety to just get busy with the important stuff and the urgent stuff you got to get busy with.
I'll start. So we do quarterly meetings in EOS, and one of the things that we typically do is I need you to stop doing, start doing. We go around the table, and it's
I don't like that part.
Nobody does. It's a fierce conversation, holding each other accountable to what you need them to do to how to show up, and you own that, and you track that during the quarter. One of the other things we do in these quarterly meetings, we take different types of tests, and I'll remember the one that stands out to me was the Colby test that Ron brought to us, and we did the test, and Ron walks in and he says, "I already knew your score before you took it." And I said, "Why? How'd you know?" He says, "Because it's the same as mine." And it turns out that I need a lot less data before I'm willing to make a decision than certain members of my team at the time. And how that was showing up is I had a sense of urgency to let's go. They needed more data because data allows you to make a better decision. So that allowed us to understand as leaders, I need to provide more data to speed up the timeline. So those types of tools, when you use them on your quarterly EOS check-ins, really allow you to build a culture and trust with each other and vulnerability. Because if I say to Steve, I need you to stop doing this or start doing this, that never feels good. And then he gets to return the favor with me. And so you do hold each other accountable.
I have a very similar fact finder number as you do, and you as well.
Let's talk about your why on the core focus. Do you recall what your why statement is? Can you share that?
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
Yes. Why do we exist? Well, yeah, I was actually going to speak to that because you mentioned values and things. And yeah, I think having clarity for the whole organization about your why and your values is so critical, because then if everyone's aligned with them, right, everyone's going to want to do the right work. And so we have our why, and we talk about it every Monday meeting as well. So our why is to help organizations thrive so they can positively impact humanity, which means that everything that we do is going to have a positive human element at the end, whether it's a healthcare company and we're actually working with someone who's in oncology, or it's brands that are creating connections and positively or creating sustainable solutions or other impact. But so we remind our team, and our team reminds each other about our why first and foremost every Monday as a reminder. Why do we do this? Why am I, staying late and talking to my client in Singapore at 9 o'clock at night? Why am I getting on this call? Why am I filling out this dashboard? Whatever it is, right? It's for that why. And then similarly for the values. One of our values is authenticity and transparency, which means that we're trying to create that psychological safety across the organization. Now, I wouldn't say we're at 100%. As a leadership team, yeah, I'd say we're at a 99.9 because we can have that conversation that you talk about. Like, this is what I need you to do. This is what I need you to stop doing, and not feel defensive. But as a company, especially as we bring on new employees, it's hard. People are not used to coming into a space where, like, I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm going to tell you where I think you can do better, right? So that takes training as well. But I think it starts with that why.
We nurture people and businesses. That's our why. We just honed this answer, but it's really consultative banking. That's how it shows up.
What you do, right? So when you combine that why with the core values, and we're open, honest, authentic, and caring with our team, you can talk about anything because it's for the greater good of everybody that's concerned. When we find that people don't like that kind of confrontational conversation, we probably don't have a good fit and need to fix that. And when I say don't have a good fit, they probably don't fit our core values, and they're not going to be great in our organization.
Our PRS.
One of the things we talk a lot about is entering the danger zone, is we have to have conversations that are uncomfortable about behavior and performance and fit. And so employees don't feel safe speaking up. Employees don't feel safe disagreeing with their boss. Employees don't feel safe. And all of that intellectual knowledge is locked in their minds. And so what these leaders are doing and have done is creating an environment where employees understand you're not going to be fired for disagreeing with the boss. They want to hear the perspectives and opinions from everybody, because ultimately, if you know anything about Patrick Lencioni's work, the first level of his 5 foundational pyramid is vulnerability-based trust. That's the ability for a person to take off the mask and be transparent, vulnerable, raw, and real. And what that leads to is a cascading effect that ultimately leads to better decision making. So really, you want to work and talk about, you're not going to get fired if you disagree with the boss. We want to know what you think. We want to hear what you have to say. That's going to make all of us a better team. And so you just have to know that even at the leadership team level, when you guys started this, leaders aren't transparent. Even at the leadership team level, it's amazing the posturing and positioning that leaders do in order to manage people's perceptions of them. And so the truth doesn't get out on the table. So there's a level of transparency and vulnerability that's absolutely essential to driving better discussions that lead to better decisions, that lead to improved performance.
As far ahead of the game as we think we are in running EOS and doing all the things we're talking about, when Dan mentioned his one-on-ones with all our team, we were surprised, frankly, at how many of our people were still sitting on issues and not surfacing them. It's hard work getting people comfortable and bringing up the issues. I think sometimes, I know Mark, when he doesn't want to raise an issue to me because I assign him the task to solve it. And so I had to quit doing that. But it can be that simple. I'm not going to raise my hand because then I'm going to be, involved. And, it's hard work getting those issues up.
There's an interesting thing that happens, we'll come back to you, when we start working with companies. It is not uncommon that 1, 2, or 3 people sitting in that leadership team meeting will not be there a year from the day we start. And it's because they don't fit the core values and they are unwilling to go into these tough conversations. They just don't want to be part of the organization. When you start having that kind of transparency and accountability built into the process.
Yeah, early in our EOS journey, we had 2 members of our exec team that left the bank, and that was by mutual agreement. What we found with EOS is that they weren't a good fit with our values, and without EOS, I'm not sure it would have been as visible, to me at least. I don't know about Steve.
It got visible.
It was so obvious that we had to part ways, and as a result of that and getting the right people in the room, I know for me, I couldn't be happier when I show up, because there's a lot of pain when you're trying to deal with someone who's a misalignment on your values and how we're trying to achieve the company goals.
We have a question over here, I think.
Hi, everybody. Bill Ness, Uli. Can you guys touch a little bit on the key factors with the relationship between the visionary and the integrator?
Great
I
question.
mean, I would imagine the characteristics and drive from a visionary are slightly different than the integrator. So what is the importance of that relationship, and is there a gray area in between that? And can they be really completely, their makeup is completely different? What's the importance of the relationship between the visionary and integrator?
Well, I have a unique problem because in most companies, I'm going to the EOS conference here in about a month. The last year it was here in San Diego. It's about 5,000 people, 4,000 people, I don't know, thousands of people. It's huge. And what I learned is, and I'm going to say 90% of those companies, the visionary and the integrator are very different. Unfortunately for me, my visionary can be the integrator too, and he could probably do everybody's job, maybe even better than them. So I've got a unique problem in that he has the skill set of both. And so keeping him in the visionary seat, it can be a challenge, and especially when you tie that to his urgency value and getting things done fast, it keeps us on our toes. But they are different skill sets.
So if you go to the website Rocket Fuel University, there's a test you can take to see which seat you belong in. I think I scored in the high 90s for visionary and about 70 for integrator. But Ron had a chart the other day that really helped me understand what seat I belong in. On the top left of a chart, if you track what you do over a couple of weeks and you put it in this box, on the upper left chart it would say things you're good at and you enjoy doing.
Love doing.
Right?
Love doing.
Say it. Use your mic.
Things that you're good at and you love doing.
Love doing. Thank you. Down below, which is the integrator seat, are things I'm good at, but I don't enjoy doing. That's the real key. Yes, I could do it, but that's not where I should spend my time. That doesn't bring me joy. So if I have to get into the weeds and solve an issue, I can do it. I would prefer not to. So I think that's how I would explain it.
Yeah, I get to pick on the visionaries in the room because I'm one of them. And I like to say when I go out and work with them, there's ones that are a little bit crazy, medium crazy, and crazy, right? And when we go in and work with a company, not every company needs a visionary seat. So if we've got an integrator personality, a little bit crazy integrator style person running a business, we don't need to create the visionary seat. We call it a VI seat because we don't need to separate that. When we got a crazy visionary sitting in the integrator seat, we need to get them out of that seat because they're creating chaos in the organization and they don't love it and they're not having fun and it's not what they're great at. And so we really got to get into what I call the thriving zone, where I spend my day doing things that inspire me, not expire me. So those personalities are really different. I got in a trap because I'm a little bit crazy to medium crazy visionary, and which could do the integrator seat. And over time, when I figured this out, I hate managing people. I just was never really a great manager. Not because I didn't care, it's just not how I'm built. So I got stuck in that integrator seat for many, many years, and over time it just wore me out. So it's really important to understand, do this exercise for 30 days. Everything you touch, not how many times you do it, not how long you do it. List out all the stuff you do and then put it into one of those 4 buckets. It's called the elevate and delegate exercise. Love it, great. Really like it, really good. Really good at it, but don't like it. And that's the trap that we need to. And then we have don't like it, not good. You stop doing that stuff tomorrow. But that box on the lower left is the issue.
Yeah, I would just add, I don't think the two have to be complete opposites, right, as you mentioned. But to your point, definitely a different skill set, different things that inspire each other. I know for us, Natalia and I also love other tests. Like we've done Colby, we've done Strength Finders, we do DISC, we just love tests. And there was one that was really clear when we did our Strength Finders, and mine is activator. So as the word suggests, I'll just go activate. Just like, oh, I have an idea, let's go activate. And Natalia's number 1 is contemplator. And so when we first got together, I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna slow me down. She's gonna be contemplating, and I'm just ready to go, right? But it is such a beautiful contrast because we're able to meet together and bring out the best of each other's strength and say, okay, here's why I think we need to move faster. And she might say, okay, have you thought of this? And I'll say, of course I haven't thought of that, because that's a detail. I don't want to think about that. I want to think about where we're going. And so it's good to have that dynamic. And the second thing I would say is the communication style between the two. We have worked really hard on how we're going to communicate, how we're going to deliver messages to each other, because we may have different languages of how we like to speak and address issues. And at first it was, I don't want to tell you what's going on with this employee, but I think you should know. And I'm like, I really don't want you to tell me, but I guess you could tell me, right? And we had to figure out the right way to really bridge the gap between our strengths, our superpowers, to be able to have that really comprehensive relationship.
One other thing, because I think you said you had 3 owners, right? So, or wait, you had 3 owners, yeah. There's an owner's box that's not talked about very much. So there's decisions that got to be made in an owner's box from a visionary seat, integrator seat, and that visionary and integrator need to do same page meetings, because I don't want the visionary integrator to be in a level 10 meeting or quarterly planning session fighting with each other because they can't agree on something. So we have these same page meeting rhythms set up for the visionary integrators. Hash everything out, have that really robust debate together, and then get into the level 10 meeting, make sure you're on the same page. And in the level 10 meeting, if something comes up, say, hey, we need to take that to our same page meeting, we'll get back to you. It's a much healthier way to deal with stuff. Did you? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. Got it, 5 minutes, got it.
I want to, go ahead, right here. We have a question right here.
Phil?
Need a mic.
The mic is on its way. Tuck, 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 tuck.
Thank you. So this has been a really enlightening conversation. You know, I thought I was going to be here and be learning about software, but really, I think we've been learning that it's EOS is really about a way that you just run your business and your processes and all that, and that's the real value that you get out of it. At the same time, I am interested in some concrete examples of how the software itself has elicited some of these actions or philosophies for your companies.
I can? Yeah, I don't know how we would do it without the software. I just don't know how we would do it. Ron introduced us to it right away. So we've never done it without it. And you click a button and you start it, you know, at 7:30 a.m. and you got 5 minutes to get through this, you got 5 minutes to get through that, you got 5 minutes to get through that, and we're always late. And then you get to the, I mean, it takes you through and forces you, it forces a discipline. I operate better when you give me the plan and then I can execute the plan. I don't like creating the plan. I will execute the plan, and 90 is just a self-contained plan.
So hopefully none of you are running a regulated industry. It's not fun, because about every 18 months your regulators come in and they have a lot of questions. And one year they came in, they said, Dan, I want to see your bank strategic plan. I said, I can't show it to you because it's in the software. It's in the 9. And what is that? What is EOS? So I gave them the keys to the vault. I gave them access to the software. And they had to go in and look at all of our warts and good things, bad things. And at the end, they said, wow, every part of a strategic plan resides in your software and more. But we've never seen this before. So I had to teach a government regulator how to understand the software. But in that software, we have our SWOT, we have our issues, we have our roadmap, our milestones, what we have to do every single day. And one of the challenges of EOS without the software is to think through, if you have a goal for 90 days, an important goal for your company, should it be a personal goal or a company goal? Once you make that decision, it shows up different in the software, and then you have to write the milestones. And usually where it breaks down is people don't take the time to write the baby steps of how you're actually going to accomplish that. So you challenge each other, you inspect those milestones, and you look deeply at what you actually have to do on a weekly basis to get it done in 90 days. And so the software, I open it up every morning, I'm looking at it, it sends text messages to me. For example, there's a section called to-dos or tasks. It sends me a reminder. And I get busy like all of us, and when I see that reminder show up, I stop what I'm doing or I work it into my day, because I know if I don't take care of that important task, By the time we get to the end of 90 days, we have not accomplished what we said was important. So it's just, it's like a rubber band on my wrist, and also a way to put down and think through before I start the quarter, what do I really have to do to take this huge project and work it down to bite-sized tasks?
Yeah, we used EOS 1 software, very similar to this. And yeah, we have our VTO in there. We've got our scorecards in there. So every week with the level 10 we review, we do headlines, rocks. What I love about it similarly is when we take a rock, let's say I have a rock for the quarter, it comes with milestones, right? We build out my milestones, and then let's say I have 5 milestones. Every one of those milestones becomes a to-do. So if I show up to a meeting and I see a big red because the date is today or yesterday, that's not great. So I'll always look the day before or the week before, say, okay, what's due next Tuesday? Because I do not like to show up to my calls and not have completed my to-do, right? So it just keeps me, same thing, organized, reminds me of what's important, but and then crosses it out as soon as things are done. So it's a really nice way to connect and engage and keep everything in one place.
I showed up in a D10 meeting the other day and opened up the software, and one of our division heads had a rock, and I said, "Are you on track or off track?" They said, "I'm on track." Then they opened up the milestones and nothing was checked off. So I said, well, let's go through the milestones and holding them accountable. It's right in your face. And they said, well, I guess I'm off track. I said, that's correct. So either the milestone's wrong or you're not being transparent with where we are in the process. So it really helps you also manage your direct reports and hold them accountable to being on track.
To Anna's point about being prepared for the meeting and getting all your red ones out of, done, I'm sitting here panicking, thinking about my meeting tomorrow and thinking about, oh, wow, and all the things I've said to you that I need to go be accountable for. That software is an accountability system.
The other thing is there's so much happening all the time that I had this, there's 90 IO in EOS 1. I had 90 IO open on my screen. As I was experiencing an issue or wanted to make something a headline, I put it into the system that day. If I tell leadership teams, if you're not tracking this stuff every day and getting this stuff written down, when you sit down for your level 10 meeting once a week, you will not remember what happened last week. So just a place to deposit these things or good ideas I have that probably aren't good ideas, I put them on the long-term issues list. So Dan's saying long-term issues list is a place where a lot of my good ideas go to die because they aren't great ideas.
One more example. When I mentioned I did the one-on-ones with the employees, if they had an issue that has been festering for a while and it wasn't in the software, that's their problem. Because when we walk into the software and we go to issues, the very first issues we resolve are ones that are cascaded, so the terminology they use in the software, up to the leadership team. We have an obligation to look at that issue, solve it, and then push it back through the software so when they go to their department meeting, there's a solution. And that allows everyone in the organization to surface an issue to the people that are the roadblocks. There are many times, I'm sure, in all your companies where leadership has to weigh in to solve something. Maybe it's to authorize a purchase of software or whatever the issue is. We are accountable to those individuals and we prioritize solving their issues before we even tackle the companies.
I just got the 2-minute warning, so.
So really quick, I just want to add, as an employee, it allows you to feel accomplished as well. So you set these standards, you're accountable, but at the same time, once you hit your rocks and your milestones, you feel accomplished. And so there's a reward to that.
I think we're at the mark, guys.
So just one final comment to close is a word we haven't focused on, the word system. And so by definition, it's methodical in procedure or plan. It's marked by thoroughness, regularity, and predictability. The absence of a system is in fact a system. So the absence of a system is in fact a system. It's called chaos. So that's what exists in a lot of companies. It's not good or bad, it's just how the company's being operated. And I think you've heard some really great stories of common language, common tools, common practices. Yeah,
I want to get the last word in here. First of all, thank you for all coming. But I want to just say this. The three of us sitting here, we're not selling anything. Why we're up here is how passionate we are about EOS. I've yet to find a company running EOS effectively who doesn't want to go out there and tell everyone because you're doing everyone a favor. I'm here because I want to share this with you. And I'm not trying to sell you anything. Just hope you understand. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.